You mentioned love marriages there. I mean, Dr. Saab, a common question that we get here is, why can't we have a love marriage? Why do we have to go through this arranged marriage process?
I would say an arranged marriage is a love marriage if it's done perfectly.
That's a good answer.
Okay.
But what about if you're going out? For example, if my parents sit me down and go, okay, now's the time, and we want to look for you. What's stopping me from going, actually, I'll go out and find my own partner? Why do I need someone to arrange that for me?
My suggestion, I wouldn't say that you physically need somebody to arrange that for you. Arrangement can be done by X, Y, Z, or arrangement could be done by yourself as well. But what I would beg to differ with is whether it's a free-fall arrangement, where it's a willy-nilly, it's an arrangement for 5 minutes one day and gone tomorrow, back next week, that which we are fully aware that will lead to a degree of anarchy. And it's a question of what system you put in place to control that sexual energy, as was described within society, which is naturally there. You can't ignore it and put it to one side. You need to have a system that works. That works not just for the individual, but for the society as a whole.
Okay.
We don't live in isolation.
Okay, something I'd like to ask you. Is the system of arranged marriage actually an Islamic system?
It is.
Right. Okay.
It is very much Islamic, because Islam prescribes the best way to resolve the problem. The problem is when you have interaction between the lady and the lad directly. So there is ample chance of getting astray out of the way, because you are sexually and physically attracted to each other. You're not using your brain at that time. So to have a perfect judgment and reasoning, you should involve your parents, who are the well-wishers of yours, or at least the guardians who have vast experience and knowledge and wisdom in this regard.
Yeah. If you look at the system at the moment right now, I mean, sometimes people get married without even seeing the other person. They don't know anything about it. You come home from school one day and your parents have, decided upon your marriage. So how do you sort of get around that from happening? You see, that's one people. Yeah. Some people's it's their worry, isn't it, that the parents do an agreement.
That is exactly where the system tends to create these problems. Right. When, in the name of an arranged marriage, it actually is not arranged at all. It's a forced marriage. And anything that's forced on human beings often is going to be rebelled or rejected. And so naturally in some societies, particularly those where there's Muslim majorities, we have found this to be the cultural interpretation of what arrangement means. I am the father, this is the mother, this is the girl, this is the boy, it's done. And the Holy Prophet Muhammad said at least you should consult the girl or the boy and get their input before you make a final choice on their lives. So this cannot be a truly Islamic or a balanced arrangement. Arrangement is not a forced situation.
Yes.
It is a cooperation. I'm going to buy a car, I'm going to ask not just my friend, I'm going to ask the salesman, I'm going to consult the internet, I'm going to look at all the books, I'm going to get all the information I can to make the best choice. I'm going to buy a house, I'll do the same thing. I'm going to get a job, I'll do the same thing. Why in the most important part of my life, I'll reject all of the information I can get from those who I think are the most trusted sources before I make that choice? Okay. That's arrangement.
So Islamically, what are the actual guidelines for when you're having an arranged marriage? How much contact are you allowed with them? Who does the talking? What kind of guidance do we have from the Quran or Hadith?
Well, as I said, in respect to your, I'll address the earlier point. Okay. In the Holy Quran, Surah Baqarah, verse 22-36, Allah has categorically mentioned, and there shall be no blame on you in throwing out a hint regarding a proposal of marriage to these women, or in keeping the desire hidden in your minds. Allah knows that you will think of them, but make not a contract with them in secret. So that is one important point to remember. Otherwise, definitely you want to get married to such a certain lady, you can propose her a marriage. And she is interested in getting married to a certain person, she can come via her parents.
I think the key is not to be emotionally involved in that person, because when you are, then you're sort of blinded by those
Right, judgment and reasoning goes up.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so what about the audience here? I mean, some of you have had arranged marriages as well. How does the whole process of arranged marriage actually work? We've got some guys at the back as well. What would you like to say?
Basically, I've had arranged marriage as well, and I don't usually see it as basically a problem. I think it's a general taboo of society that they feel their interpretation that when a young Muslim is getting married, it's been forced upon them by their parents. As Maulana Hanif Sahib has said, an arrangement is basically involving both parties, So you ask the girl, you ask the prospective groom as well in terms of what do you feel, and you ask the necessary questions, and then obviously you have your guardians to advise you on what is better, because they've been through that experience, right, and they have acquired that knowledge, and that will guide you in the right way. So that's why you had guardians being, for consultation purposes. Okay. And then especially from a woman's perspective, she has her guardian, which in Islam is constituted as wali, to give that consent for a basically bride. So to me, it's an arrangement basically where everybody's happy, right, and it has to be liked for it to be done, and it can't be forced upon you.
Okay. Dr. Saab, I just want to come back to you. I mean, let's keep this contemporary. In today's society, I mean, there's so much mixing going on. There's dating, you've got civil partnerships and everything, and especially in the West as well. If you want to go out and buy something, you get it exactly how you like. You go out and make sure it's the right one. So a lot of the khuddam have been emailing in, and they can't understand how you can actually marry someone you haven't met personally. I mean, you might not be able to spend much time with them. How is that, how do you actually go about doing that? It's a big jump for most people living in this society of growing up here.
I would say, irrespective of which society you are, as long as they're appreciative of the reasonings behind a system, there is, what alternative is there? Let's look at the alternative. The alternative is, I'll find my partner, we're compatible for about a week or two, we're amicable, it's fine, let's go apart, let's go find somebody else. Number 3, number 4, number 5. Then then leads to this seed of promiscuity, and this whole element of chastity within society. If you look at our moral codes within Great Britain, 60 years ago, 80 years ago, 100 years ago, they're a stark contrast to how they are at the moment. That's my answer to your question would be that there's this ideal within the mind itself. There is that emotional ideal that yes, let's find perfection. Perfection has to be worked towards, and if you're going to experiment with that perfection, you then have to be ready to deal with the consequences of that experimentation. The consequences are in front of us as we see.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at society nowadays, especially in the West, the rates of divorce are going up as well. Do you think that's directly linked to the way people find their partner?
I think the rates of divorce are most definitely linked to the way society is finding its partner and the reasonings for finding that partner. Islam, we've heard, sets certain regulations, and there is, I go back to this issue, there is a third person in that relationship. Right. It is a marriage in a way of 3 people. There is a God Almighty within that, and that's what the rest of society seems to forget. That there is one overarching being that's guiding and holding your hands through that journey. And when you leave him alone, then it's a free-for-all, and you do what you want.
Azizah, would you agree with that?
This last point cannot be under and overemphasized. I mean, under that, before you get into marriage, sometimes we don't talk about, well, what are you actually getting yourself into? What is the purpose of this? In the course of the nikah ceremony, the Holy Prophet Muhammad selected certain verses of the Holy Quran for a reason. That in that moment where 2 people are about to make a life commitment, ideally, they need to understand it cannot be based just on love. So you hear the word over and over, ittaqullah, fear Allah. Fear Allah does not just mean that we have some fear of some grand being going to destroy us, means that we have another relationship in everything else we do. That is a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if that is a strong relationship, He is overlooking our affairs and He's blessing them. So that where there are struggles because, as we say nowadays, the love is gone, I don't feel it anymore, or you're not the same person you used to be, or we have outgrown each other, at that moment a person begins to realize, this is a human being, I'm a human being. They're changing, I'm changing. They were not supposed to be always the same, and let me remember that they are still related to God, and so am I. That carries a relationship forward, so you do not need to start just on the premise that I must love you before I like you, and respect you and appreciate you and see some good in you. I can love you as one of God's creation and build from there and find love and maybe lose love and find it again, and that's going to be for every single relationship you'll ever have in life.